Hi, everyone, and welcome to this next session of the Historical Materialism online conference.
Hi, everyone, and welcome.
Apologies for that technical issue. Very bad idea to have you yourself logged in both on Zoom and on YouTube at the same time. So as I was saying, welcome to this session, the next session of the Historical Materialism online conference, where we are launching the new issue of Notes from Below, where you'll have the opportunity to hear both from some of our editors as well as workers who have contributed to this special issue, which is a collection of workers' writings from the workplace and gives an insight into the different issues that and challenges workers are facing in organizing and in relations with employers. We'll give it a couple of minutes still to allow people to join us. I can see you are still logging in for the moment, so we'll give it a couple of minutes and then we'll get started. Okay, so we're gonna get started. I think quite a few people have joined us now, so we'll get going. So as I was saying, welcome to this, the next session of the Historical Materialism Conference online, and the first of the day. There's a later one this evening that I'll remind you of before we log out later on this afternoon. My name is Sai. I'm an editor both for Historical Materialism and for Notes from Below, and I'll be chairing today's session. I'll introduce briefly the session, some housekeeping rules, and our speakers, and then we'll get going. So I should say that this session is a little bit different than others you might have seen. It's organized between Historical Materialism and Notes from Below, and it launches the new issue of Notes from Below from the workplace, a collection of worker writings. And the collection is made up of 12 pieces written by workers in a number of different industries, dealing with the nature of their work, challenges in the workplaces, as well as how they deal with either the possibility or the difficulty of organizing within it. We have had a couple of issues in this session. We are victims of the times, unfortunately, and of Corona. Two of our contributors today have had to drop out in the last 24 hours. So one of our editors, Lorenza Monaco, won't be with us, and we obviously wish her well and a rapid recovery. as well as one of our speakers, one of the two teaching assistants who contributed to the issue. You can luckily still read her contribution to the project by logging in on Notes from Below, where you can read her piece. But so both the teaching assistant and Lorenza will not be able to join us, unfortunately. Which also leads me to something, which is that you'll see that some of the speakers will be named, others won't, given that we are dealing with people trying to organize at work. There's different kind of sensitivities around this, while some are also named, but with different names, so you will never know. The way we'll run the session today is that you are able to ask questions through YouTube in the chat, and that chat is moderated. So we ask you to keep it comradely and as friendly as possible within Marxist debates. And we will collate the questions you ask, which will then be asked to the speakers at the end of the session. Each of our speakers will have about 10 minutes to kick us off, and then we'll go. We have a 2-hour slot, but we'll go for as long as your questions are being asked, and the speakers will be able to answer it. So without further ado, our speakers today will first be Jamie Woodcock, who's an editor both for Notes from Below and of Historical Materialism, who's stepping in for Lorenza Monaco, and who will introduce the project and the kind of the idea behind it. He will be followed by John Holland, an Amazon warehouse worker, followed by Sam Di Bella, who's a sub-editor. Amal will then follow him, who's an editor for Red Pepper, as well as a member of the South London Bartenders Network, and one of his comrades of the South London Bartender Network will join after that. And like I say, when they are finished, you will have the opportunity to have your questions that are being posed in the chat answered by the speakers. So without further ado, Jamie, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Sai. So what I wanted to do with my short piece to talk about here is just to give a little bit of background about where this publication came from, why we decided to do it, and about how other people can get involved in projects like this. So I think I speak for the entire Notes from Below editorial board when I say that this project is the thing that we are most proud of having done as a group. Across Notes from Below, and people can of course read some of our previous issues as well as the entire book online, is we've really tried to find a way to help people write about their experience of work in order to think about organizing around it. And we've had shorter pieces in Notes from Below from a range of different sectors. But really this collection that we're launching today from the workplace, brings together snapshots of the experience of work from across the economy. These tell us things about, what's happening in a range of different industries, from call centers to kitchens, from courier work to warehouses, from classrooms to online platforms, to editorial offices and elsewhere. And they give us a sense of how work is changing, but more importantly, how workers are beginning to respond to those changes. And so we think that these provide insights into the workings of capitalism today. And at Notes from Below, we've hosted streams at Historical Materialism for the past couple of years, because we think how work is changing and the experience workers have, in workplaces, physical workplaces, or in increasingly in other kinds of workplaces, like those that we've covered in the book, is central for understanding capitalism. The experience of work for us is the kind of raw material of class struggle. When somebody stands up against their boss, when somebody tries to contest a new kind of technology being used in the workplace. For those of us on the left, and for those of us interested in Marxism and imagining different kinds of futures, these are the struggles and the moments that can point us towards a different kind of society. And so what we've tried to do, and I want to give a little bit of background about how this project kind of came into being, is we were lucky enough to get a grant from the Barry Emile and Norman Melbourne Trust. And we decided to use this grant to support new writers as part of the collection. And so we had a very grand plan about a year ago, where we set up a whole number of writing workshops, where we got people together to start talking about the writing process. Despite our grand plans, we only managed to have one of these workshops because then the lockdown began quite quickly. But the idea behind this project wasn't just to help people to write something about their individual workplace. The idea was to use what we call the approach of workers' inquiry. So to say that workers already have an understanding of their work, and to support people in expressing what's happening in their workplace and sharing those ideas with others. So when we started off, we had a kind of co-writing workshop. We brought people together. We talked about the challenges of work in different contexts. We got people sharing ideas about how they would begin their own writing about work. And we discussed through the framework that we use at Notes from Below for making sense of work and workers' inquiry. And I think throughout all of the pieces that have been published, you can really see quite strongly the connections that we've tried to make in other pieces at Notes from Below. And so what we started with in the workshops was getting people to talk about the technical composition of their work. How is their work organized? Who do they work with? Who do they work for? What are the connections to other kinds of workers? So trying to draw out what some Marxists have talked about previously as details of the labor process, of how people's work is changing in different ways. And I think across the pieces, we can see both quite traditional ways of organizing work, but also increasingly new ways of work being organized through digital platforms, through the use of technology in new ways. The second aspect that we talked through in the worker writing workshop is what we term social composition. So not how workers are composed in the workplace, but how workers are composed outside of the workplace. The kinds of communities and networks that workers have, the conditions in which we, in which we survive and live outside of the workplace, for making sense of how these things affect not only our work, but how we can struggle against our work. And then finally, to talk about political composition. What are the new ways that workers are finding to resist, to organize, to build power against their bosses in different ways? And so across each of these different pieces, we can see people in their own words beginning to outline how they can try and transform their work away from the interests of people that currently have power and into the interests of people who are doing the work day to day. And so we see this collection not as a kind of end in and of itself, but as something that goes back to something that lots of Marxists should be concerned with. That through our labor and our work, we change the world. The world is created and constantly recreated through the kinds of work that we see in this collection. But through the process of work, workers too are changed. And through the process of struggle, workers are changed. And so bringing together these perspectives of people talking about their work, sharing their ideas, the things that have worked, sometimes the things that haven't worked, we hope to build a bigger conversation about what building working class power looks like in the here and now. But I don't want to talk too much at length about the ideas behind Notes from Below, because given we've written a collection or we've put together a collection and supported a collection of people giving their perspectives about work, I'm really, really pleased now to be able to pass on to some of our writers who've contributed to this collection. Just a couple of final things before I finish up. The first is you can read this collection entirely online, and Lydia's going to put links to this in the YouTube chat. But if you're interested in reading a physical copy, we've printed a whole number of the copies which are available for free. And if you cover postage, and you're very welcome to make a donation to Notes from Below, we can get a physical copy out to you. But also have a think about who else might want to read a collection about work today and people finding ways to work and struggle. Because we want to use this book not only as a kind of snapshot of what's happening at work, but to help encourage and build confidence of other people to start organizing today. So thank you all for coming to listen today, and I'm very pleased now to be able to hand over to some of our other speakers.
Thanks a lot, Jamie. And without further ado, I'll give the floor to John, who is our first contributor, who will kick us off, and who's an Amazon warehouse worker. John, the floor's all yours.
Hello, have I successfully unmuted myself? Cool. Okay, so my piece is about working for Amazon. I've spent a lot of this year working in their huge warehouse in Rugeley, which, by the way, is hiring a few hundred extra temporary staff over Christmas. So if any of you were feeling inspired by my piece to go work for Amazon, now's your chance, go and do it. So there's 3 points of my piece really that I want people to think about. Number one is mainly me just talking like the rudimentary details of what working for Amazon, what it is, so people understand what actually goes on in one of their warehouses. Number two, I'm trying to immerse readers in what it really feels like to work in a place like that, and the impact that it has on you psychologically, especially, is the main theme. And number three, I want people to be thinking about, so what are we going to do about it? I'll try and talk a bit more in this little talk rather than the piece itself about what I think we need to do or think about doing to change things from the admittingly somewhat depressing picture that I painted in the piece. One of my interpretations of the American presidential election is that people may have underestimated just how resilient the international high-tech neoliberal economic model is. Joe Biden and the mainstream Democratic Party really represent the continued dominance of neoliberalism over any kind of nationalist alternative. Not that Trump was going to offer us anything better, but I think it just shows the huge strength of what we're up against if we want to organize for a better world for the working class especially. So back to Amazon. Working at Amazon, here's how it works. Number one, it's all been split into a division of labor where everyone is split into groups where we each do one simple specific task over and over again all day without any real understanding or awareness of what anyone else in the warehouse is doing. To the best of my knowledge, which involved a lot of snooping around, there's 5 different types of worker at the warehouse in Rugeley, not including management, and a bunch of support roles, which are a lot smaller. These five groups of workers are, number one, there's the receivers. These are the workers who spend their days just standing at the gates as the lorries come in, and they just unload the boxes and then send them up to be prepared, or prepped as we call them. Number two, there's preppers. Now these are the workers who, after the goods have been unloaded, they prepare them so they're ready to be stored. So this generally involves opening each box and attaching an Amazon specific barcode to each item and then sealing them back up again. And the other main part of this task is basically quality control, making sure that there's nothing broken being stored, for example. Then the boxes are stored away to be stowed rather by the stowers, which is group number 3. And this is the job which I've spent the vast majority of my time doing. these are the workers who stow, if you're not familiar with that word, basically store the goods after they've all been prepared and ready. Now, each stower at the start of every day is assigned to a specific location in the building. They've all got codes, and the codes are, number one, what floor are you on? And number two, which lift are you standing outside? There's about 11 different lifts in the warehouse, and each have got a constant stream of goods going into them. So for example, you'll go to lift F, floor 3, and you'll just stand there unless you get told to go somewhere else. And as the lifts open, carts of goods will come in. You'll just take one cart, go down the aisles of shelves, find some space, then you'll take each box, open it, scan the goods with your scanner, which what that does is records what is being stowed and where exactly you've stowed it, as you will then scan it on the shelf. And then when the cart's empty, you then troll the thing back to the lift to be taken away, and you take a new full one. Number 4, you have pickers. These are the sworn enemy of the stowers because they're constantly getting in our way. And what their job is, when orders are made, the pickers go around the shelves and they have a list on their little scanner of what they need to collect and where exactly it is. They take them off the shelves, scan that they've removed it, and take it back down somewhere where lastly we have the deliverers. Now, these are the workers who go through the items which have already been taken off the shelves and then collect them to be put into specific orders. What they'll do is they'll look at the postcode where everything is being sent to, and everything will be stacked roughly by order of the postcode. So it's basically sorted in geographic location. So then it's all then loaded onto the lorries to be driven out and delivered a lot more efficiently. This is for Amazon Prime items, which is supposed to be delivered by the next working day. Some of the ones where the delivery date is not so urgent, they'll just be taken to a distribution company that gets outsourced instead. So that's what working in Amazon exactly entails. Now, the main theme of my piece really is getting into the intense dehumanization working in a place like this does to you. There's constant surveillance. So the scanners that I mentioned, they also, because you're using them constantly, they're constantly recording where exactly you are. And every now and then you'll get messages pop through on them from the management telling you to go to this place or another. Coupled with, there must be 50,000 CCTV cameras in this place. You're constantly being watched all the time. So there's a surveillance effect on you, and it it changes the way you behave to that you've always got to pretend that you're not really a human being while working there. If anyone's familiar with the Borg from Star Trek, it's kind of like when the crew beams over to the Borg ship and they just know that we need to just walk around like a drone and blend in and we'll be fine. That's what everyone does there. You constantly get bombarded with loads of rules which are never really explained, which you need to follow. For example, there's a limit of items that you need to stow constantly. I'm told at the moment that there's you need to be doing 35 large items an hour or 178 small items per hour. And if you're going below the average, you'll get messages pop up on your scanner. You need to speed up, mate. You're going too slow. And one of the other things about how the work is divided is that you can go all day and you never really have to actually talk to anyone. The only time you really need to actually talk to anyone really is if something goes wrong. For example, there's an item in your trolley that shouldn't be there, like something flammable, because flammable items are stored in a specific area of the warehouse. In which case, still, all you really need to do is go over to what's called a problem solver, rather than your direct call workers. And even then, you don't really have a real human conversation with them because we're all trained to speak in Amazon language, which the way it works is it's kind of like when you're in a computer game where there's only a few specific phrases that you can ever say to anyone, and they've got pre-programmed responses which they return with. So your conversations are almost always these like one-word things that you'll go up, flammable, and then the problem solver will direct you what to do with it or to go work somewhere else. Now, to the what to do section, this all makes the prospects of worker organising extremely difficult. If you were to deliberately concoct a system to obstruct workers from organising, or even just building any sense of solidarity with one another, this is pretty perfect. But despite all that, there have been some success stories which you can read about. I was really thrilled, for example, to read about Amazon workers in Minneapolis in the United States staging walkouts over the company not allowing anyone to work over 30 hours a week. That's because under the Affordable Care Act in America, the law is that if you work 30 hours a week or more, then the company needs to provide you with medical insurance. That's the reason why they're stopping them from doing that. And partly I was thrilled to hear about it just because I know from working in Amazon that there must have been a huge organising efforts behind the scenes to pull that off. Another one of the strengths Amazon management has over its workers is because it's such an international corporation that any labour action organised locally can simply be circumvented without significant disruption. An example to illustrate this is in France this April even, there was a walkout of Amazon workers accusing the company of not doing enough to protect them from the coronavirus. They then won a court order against the company, ordering it to improve its health and safety measures or face a load of fines. But Amazon's response was to simply close down all its warehouses in France and reroute all the deliveries via its Italian warehouses. What this shows, I think, is if there's going to be any serious attempt to bring Amazon to heel, it's going to have to be a big international effort. So they can't just go elsewhere. And then, for example, if we move from Rugeley, if we organise something there, they could just get things delivered from one of the other ones in Britain, or they can just move to France or something like that. It doesn't make a big difference to them because they can just post anything so quickly. With local stuff, I am familiar with GMB, the trade union. At least publicly, seems to have been trying to organise Amazon workers in Britain, albeit doesn't seem to have been very successful from what I can tell. The workers here though in Amazon, they are aware about how they've been treated, and they are aware that things could be a lot better for them. There's constant complaining. It's not so much about like pay but more like just how they're treated in the warehouses, like the conditions of the work. I think one of the issues is, again, this ties in with Amazon being such an international company, is that in Britain, a lot of the workers are either mostly Romanian, the foreign workers, a lot of them are Polish as well, and they get mostly cut off from the British workers. And I don't see any unionisation effort succeeding unless GMB or whatever union is trying to do it, they invest in having like a Romanian or a Polish speaking organizer as well. And also one of the things that they've been doing, which I'd advise not to do, is they just go to the Amazon warehouses and try to talk to workers just directly outside. This isn't a good idea because, like I said, with the constant surveillance thing, workers are very nervous about doing anything like that, especially when they're near the warehouses. A better way to probably do this is some kind of online thing, which if you look at Amazon Workers International, that is what they've been doing. Or if you want some physical interaction, if you're better off to just go to the bus drop-off points where Amazon buses in its workers from miles around, and then just talk to people there, because at least you know there's not going to be a load of Amazon workers spying on you then. At the time of writing, Jeff Bezos' net worth was 189 billion. I've just checked now, and his net wealth is now over 200 billion. So it doesn't take much imagination to see how much people are being ripped off by this company. Now, if the Rugeley Amazon warehouse stopped functioning, it would probably hit the economy of the West Midlands quite a lot. It wouldn't hurt Amazon in particular, but so many businesses and people are dependent on these international distribution companies is what it really is. So I've forgotten how I was going to finish now, but we just need to really think about how we're going to organize in these places, because these kind of huge companies are only going to get bigger. They're only going to get more powerful. And I don't think in the near future, there's any way around us trying to seriously organize in these places. All right, done. Cheers.
Thank you so much, John, for that contribution and for the kind of questions you threw up. I think that will also be helpful for the discussion, and to remind people watching us that you can ask questions or share thoughts in the chat that will be asked to the speakers afterwards. And without further ado, we'll now move on to Sam, who's a sub-editor and who, like John, contributed to the to the issue, and that you can check out online. So Sam, the floor is all yours.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to thank Notes from Below for giving me the opportunity to write about this. It felt really good as a sub-editor, which is a job that's often totally beneath notice. I'll just start with a description of the work, because I don't know how many people are familiar. So a sub-editor, I was a news sub-editor at a weekly financial trade publication, where I sort of served somewhere between a copy editor and a desktop publisher. We were a print magazine, so the primary sort of organization and structure of our work is around the press week. We worked in between the assigning editors and reporters on the one hand, who would provide the copy to us, and the designers and printers who would actually produce the physical object. And we were sort of in between, and our job was to fix everything that could possibly prevent the magazine from going to press and still make it seem reputable, so that you don't see a huge typo on the cover and then people think that the publication isn't worth anything. So the way that the press week would be structured is we would start by coming up with a flat plan of the articles that would be in each issue, like a breakdown page by page, where the ads would be, what kind of columns, everything like that. And this would often be sort of a negotiating process, because the editors would be obligated to put certain pieces near ads. They would often try to cut our diversity column, and we would try to keep it. So there was a whole long negotiating process, after which we would have 3 press days, where we would basically, sometimes the copy would be filed early, but we would be sent the copy in the morning. The reporters would have filed it with the editors, who would then do big structural stuff, like taking out paragraphs or being like, this, you need another quote about this. And then on the actual press day, we would be sent the copy to clean. This was mostly stuff just like line editing for grammar, looking for typos, but also doing things like fact checking. Sometimes we would have to check people's names. Sometimes we would ask for more copy on a particular topic or something. We would also, then what we would do is we would take this cleaned copy and flow it into an Adobe InDesign template and sort of do all of the typesetting. We would write the headlines, stand first, pick images, get the rights for them, add captions, and then do a proofing process with the editors where we print something out or send a PDF, and then we would input corrections. So this was a lot of things to do in a single day. We would do about 10 pages a day on a really busy press day. Sort of the way I'll talk about this later, but sort of the cadence of the work often meant that we would be doing nothing for a very long time and then have an insanely stressful short period of time that would extend way past normal working hours. My goal for writing this piece was I wanted to demonstrate the ways that serial copy, the text in repeated publications, can serve as an exploitable commodity, that it's just like anything else. As an example of that, the company would run full-page ads that would receive anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 pounds a week. Ads on our covers would make 10,000 pounds a week. So every issue of the magazine that I was publishing, they had something like, I don't know, 6 or 7 ads, would make more than I made in a year. And then extra mind-blowing, because this is a trade publication, the company was really closely, CityWire is really closely tied to the industry that it covers. So actually most of their money was made from events. All the subscriptions are free. Their goal was to get people to come to these conferences where finance workers would be given cheese and talked to by an inspirational speaker, and then kind of huddled, diverted into different like boxes where people from different finance technology companies or hedge funds would try to get them to put all of their clients' pension savings into whatever. And that's where the vast majority of the money actually came from. In terms of one of my other goals for writing this piece is sort of to talk about the role that the sub-editor plays in a newsroom, and how divorced we were from what people traditionally think of like the professional identity of a journalist. There is the National Union of Journalists, and newsrooms are fairly well unionized, but definitely not this one. And part of that comes from the way that the company was structured. It was run by the people who set it up 20 years ago, and most of the editors reported directly to the executive officers, which is a violation of editorial independence. So a lot of the things that we did were according to whatever the whims of the executives were. And this also meant that the journalists that we were working with were not really operating under the identity of like journalism as a bastion of democracy, as a form of accountability, either for government or industry or individual people. That's not really what their goal was. Instead, a lot of the editors operated more as a form of middle management. So there's sort of like there was like this spectrum of the closer people were to the creation and structure of the overall publication from like an abstract sense, the higher their status was. The closer they were to the printers and the actual physical production, like we were, the less status. And I think historically this makes sense, printers being really strongly unionized. And I think there's part of the reason I wrote this piece also is that I think that there is a lot of potential for the production editor staff of newsrooms to be, there's potential there. One of the other things, sorry, about the way that that the journalists would sort of direct attention is that they would have this direct access to the management of the company. We were often the very last ones who would find out about something, and they would usually claim that it needed to be so, that they would be held responsible, and so it sort of created this de facto, we would report to them, even though that wasn't actually the case. On the more positive side, in terms of the actual resistance that that the sub-editors were able to exert. First, the sub-editors operated on an independent desk, separate from the editors and writers at each magazine, which is, all of them were associated with a specific publication, and we were responsible for one as well. But we also were able to speak with each other a lot about whether something we were being asked to do was over the line, who was being like insanely egotistical. We were able to talk about that amongst ourselves and be able to compare, which was really, really helpful and great for my mental health. In terms of the actual workflow, the way that editing works, as I mentioned, has this cadence to it. Because there's the hard limit of the printing deadline, after which the company would have to pay an enormous amount of money to either get something reprinted or get something rush printed, there's a ton of pressure to have everything done at a certain amount of time, which on the one hand meant that we often had to, we were the last ones before they threw the pages into the printer, and so there was an immense amount of pressure on us to do so. At the same time, that meant that we had a lot of autonomy over what we would do in those rushed moments. For example, between us and the designers were the only ones who had access to InDesign, which was the actual way of causing the edits on page. The journalists and editors weren't able to actually do that. And so that meant that there were a lot of ways that we could either reclaim time or sort of distribute our attention as we wanted. For example, if we would have to do a lot of advertorial articles, which were articles written by advertisers, published by us to look as if they were written by us, which is disgusting. And we would, one of the qualities of copy is that it's really hard to tell whether someone's done a good job. That was part of why we're like, as long as it doesn't have typos, you can run it through like a spell checker. And then it's really hard to tell whether someone just did that and like looked over in 30 seconds, as opposed to spent an hour or so actually like reworking the copy to try and make it clean and intelligible. So with things like advertorial copy, or if we thought a particular article was gross, it was really easy for us to kind of skim over it and pay attention to something else instead. Similarly, the cadence of the way the copy came to us meant that we would often have to be on call, basically, waiting for the journalists and the editors to file their copy with us. So there was a limit on how much the company could actually ask us to do, because we had to sort of sit there in stasis waiting for the copy to arrive because of the time pressures of the printer. So a lot of sub-editors were able to either, use that time just to do whatever they want, to work, to write, to do other things. And that sort of also goes to the lack of supervision that occurred over the copy itself. I do think, I kind of on a note to end, I do think that for the workplace I'm in, there's a sort of limited, there's limited potential because of the field that we cover. Because we're working with finance people, the main purpose of the publications are to encourage people to invest money and to provide legitimacy and a sense of meaning for financial workers, which I'd rather not do at all, but that's sort of baked into the whole work process. But I do think that overall, there's a ton of potential for the production editors and people working in print production to organize and to unionize more strongly in a way that the sort of like journalistic professional identity has been able to in the past. So I'll end on that note. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you very much for that contribution, Sam. And for all of those of you watching and posting your comments and questions. We're even already seeing that some of you are ordering the issue as you listen. So that's fantastic. And all of you can continue doing that or access it for free online. We'll now move to Amma, who will start as the first contribution about the South London Bar Workers Network. And the floor is all yours, Amma.
Thanks very much. And thank you to everyone who's spoken before. It's really interesting and really inspiring to hear you talk and also to read the pieces in the book. I'm just going to talk a little bit about what South London Bartenders Network is and who we are and what it kind of came out of. And then Isaac's going to talk a bit about the realities of the work. So I work at a pub called the Ivy House, which is a community-owned pub in South London. And maybe two years ago, I think, we succeeded in unionizing and organizing against an allegedly bad manager for multiple reasons, with allegations of racism, sexism, homophobia, bullying, the whole shebang. And we were compelled to take strike action when there were unfair dismissals from the committee that ran the pub in return. We won the Wildcat strike. We won, in principle, we won fixed contracts, union recognition, and the reinstatement of the 4 members of staff. And what followed was quite difficult and quite wearing in many ways. We'd had this pretty incredible success by the standards of hospitality and trade union organizing. But the process afterwards was quite fraught. There was a lack of support, a lack of tailored understanding from the union towards independent sites. And simultaneously, there wasn't really a blueprint for how an ethical business should respond to direct action from trade union in a chronically under-organized sector. We'd hoped that actions at the Ivy House could form a catalyst for more organising across South London. But it was only last year when the Bakers Union organiser who we'd been working with returned to Peckham with the Fast Food Rights campaign, organising McDonald's, KFC, all of those fast food outlets in South London. It was only then that the workers from the Ivy House were prepared again to try and organise and try and actually become a little bit active. We knew from our own experience that the best way to organise in a workplace is for it to be led by workers, for the strategy and the demands to be led by workers. And we didn't want to be tied to any particular union in trying to mobilise in quite small sites. We had a couple of conversations with different organisers, with different workers, in other pubs, in other bars, in cafes. And as the pandemic hit the UK, we realised we couldn't delay any longer. So we launched with just over a dozen members, I think. So brewers, baristas, bartenders, chefs from across South London. And we formed a solidarity network. And the aim of the network was not only to unionize sites in South London, but it was actually to try and organize community power. We recognized from the Ivy House and from Fast Food Rights campaign that community unionism is the only way that you can effectively utilize local power, especially when you're going up against businesses that are often seen as independent, or even chain businesses that are seen as pillars of the community. There's a sense that the pub is often like doing God's work as a social hub. And so it can be quite difficult to organize within that. We were quite determined to try and mobilize counter power from the perspective of workers that could harness that strong sense of community that you find across South London. So we launched earlier this year, and there's now upwards of 30 members in about a dozen different sites across South London. We've had some successes. So we've been involved in getting holiday pay returned to workers who had been compelled to sign it away. We've accompanied each other to disciplinaries and stopped unfair redundancies from happening. We've organised and strategized to try and prevent involuntary redundancy in response to the pandemic, where we're producing and distributing legal information and trade union strategy. We've got members in 4 different trade unions, and we've got workers from North East London and Bristol who are interested in using the same strategy that we have in setting up a network that works with and against unions rather than affiliated and directed by paid organisers. So there's scope for this to kind of expand to a national level as a collective of worker-led networks. But our aims in the short term are more modest and more ambitious in many ways. Hospitality is chronically under-organised and under-unionised for a whole host of different reasons. And we're not under any illusions that it's going to be easy, because it hasn't been in our own experience. But we've seen what happens when campaigns in chain pubs in particular in the area are led by dedicated trade union organisers who are paid up. And what tends to happen is that when the organisers eventually leave, the momentum leaves with them. Or what happens is the workers feel like they're getting a service from the union, and therefore they feel entitled to things without realizing that really in union organizing, you are the union and you have to step forward and change things. Through being involved in the network, like I've learned so much, and we're going to be having a strategy day to try and formalize things a bit, to put secure structures for accountability and democratic process in place as well. But we're really excited about the small successes that we have had and the way forward, because despite the pandemic, despite the recession, despite housing insecurity and all of the other nationwide problems that are being experienced by the working class in particular, we've seen a will to fight, and there are still people coming up and finding us and wanting to get involved. And there is a real sense of solidarity that can come out of crisis, and we're hoping to harness that into something that can be channeled strategically. Yeah, so that's the network. Isaac, do you want to talk about the work a little bit now?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Isaac. Essentially, just to add on to what Amar was saying, really the hospitality conditions in general, I mean, it's different for every place you work, but a lot of people in the network, they face like not the best pay in the world, let's say. You got a lot of precarity on your job. You don't know how secure it is half the time. A lot of us are on 0-hour contracts as well, which means we could be working on a Friday, and then that's when we receive next week's rota. So we know we're working Monday as well till Friday. Again, same story. Yeah, there's a lot of challenges to organizing in hospitality. A lot of people don't really know what unions are, because a lot of people are like young, they're new to work, and they're kind of nervous. They feel like if you join a union, you're gonna make your boss mad. And that made it really difficult when you're trying to talk to members of staff about these kind of things, because they get really nervous, and it just makes it kind of tough on everyone. What else can I say about this? Fear of speaking up, yeah, again, a lot of the staff members, especially in the jobs I've worked, they're young, they're only there for the short term to make a bit of cash. Maybe you've got a uni holiday, so you're back for a couple of months. So they don't really have any real reason they feel like they need to speak up if they say are getting overworked, underpaid, treated badly by staff or customers. So yeah, it just means that a lot of staff aren't really willing to go the extra mile, because they can just go and find another job. So I feel like we're all treated in the same kind of bubble there. My personal experience with the network has been great. It's helped me a lot to just understand more my rights as a worker, and just try help get other people I work with to understand the same things, know that if we're being treated certain ways, we can request, you know, these kind of things. Under COVID-19, it has caused a lot of challenges. Obviously, it'd be a lot easier to do these social meetups where we could actually meet and talk and chill. But we've been doing a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of ranting sessions, which is great because everyone's facing similar issues. Kind of let it out there, all anonymous and such. Yeah, not much more I think I got to say about that. But yeah.
Thank you very much to both of you and to all of our speakers for those contributions. And we'll now move on to questions. If people listening to us and logging in still have others, or if others come and listen to the questions, you can, to the answers, I mean, you can keep posting them. So we have a first question specifically for John, but I actually think it would be interesting for everybody to say something about it, because I know many of you actually mentioned it in your written pieces, and so perhaps it'd be interesting to say something about this now. So the question is to John: could you say briefly how COVID changed workplace activity, if at all? So the consequences of COVID. Then we have another question for the Bartenders Network. I would love to know more about how the Bartenders Network empowers members to not rely on paid staff and how they came to that political position. And again, I think there's been sort of mentions across the kind of the different presentations about unions, about organizing. And I think, you know, so if anybody else felt moved to say something about that, about unionization, etc., that would be interesting. And then a question for Sam. You talked about why you said that there was potential. You thought about organizing kind of workers that are more at the productive edge of the, you said there is potential here. Could you develop on this? What kind of organizing do you think is possible in the industry? Are there examples you can point to? So yeah, let's start maybe with those three questions, and then we can take more as and if they come along. So John, perhaps you can start us off.
Hello. Yep, so I do talk a bit about this in the piece, actually, about the COVID restrictions, but to just briefly answer to you, yes, there's been a lot of changes. Number one, everyone has to wear masks as soon as they enter the building. Number two, there's a 2 meter distance rule that everyone needs to, not everyone needs to be 2 meters apart where it's possible. It does get a bit lax when you're standing around lifts taking goods away, because it's almost impossible to stay 2 meters apart from everyone at that point. And number three, something which connects with what I was talking about earlier with the constant feeling of surveillance. Amazon's created a new type of manager, kind of called the social distancing champions. And their job is to basically patrol the aisles, making sure everyone's keeping 2 meters apart. And if they catch you not doing it, or catch you not wearing your mask properly, they'll come over and tell you off. There has been a lot of complaints along the co-workers about those people, because it does attract the kind of types who just like to go around bossing people around. Yeah, those three are the biggest things that have changed. Actually, there's a fourth one I forgot to mention. When you have your lunch now, all the tables are kept 2 meters apart, and you need to sit on your own. So you never talk to your co-workers when you're on lunch either. There you go.
Oh, sorry. Am I going on that? Should I answer my question, or?
You can answer your direct question, but you can also mention something more general. Like I think the COVID thing is certainly relevant to all of you. The question of unions.
Yeah. So I feel like the main, so the workplace before the pandemic was sort of like this typical open plan office where all the subs sat at one place. A lot of the editorial staff for each of the magazines would sit together. And so that sort of structured who would speak with who. It also meant that we could use a lot of physical proofs. We'd print out most of the pages that we would do and like ferry them around. We would also use like the flat plans that we would have would be like covered in highlighters as we were keeping track of where everything was during the day. And so so that kind of changed, we had to change that whole work process to be digital, which on the one hand, because there was this sort of moment of change, we were able to do a lot of things so that we wouldn't have to so that we wouldn't have to work as hard. On the other hand, the editorial staff sort of took it as an opportunity to micromanage us because we weren't physically accessible all the time. So most of my work days earlier this year consisted of starting the day with a video call that would drag on for like 2 hours as each individual person would be told what to do, which when the detail that you need to have to like make sure that you're actually reading whatever you're reading and like finding random things are just like blown up by all of that. It also kind of changed the way that the structure that news would come to us, because there literally just wasn't that much news happening anymore, which was kind of a weird thing to see. And it also made clear how much the existence of the publications depended on ad sales. We just stopped running issues if they couldn't sell enough ads. And so there is like this weird thing where it made clear how much of these publications was dependent and designed only like centered around that act. In terms of the question about unionizing potential, I feel like it's kind of tricky because, as I mentioned, I feel like compared to most of publishing, newsrooms are more unionized, particularly in the UK, more than something like book publishing or whatever. There's a ton on the other, and there's also a lot of sort of developing, because a lot of sub-editors are freelance. There's a lot of publishing freelance unions, like the IWW freelance union, which I really admire. The trouble comes that on the one hand, what I'm suggesting is sort of like a unionizing bridge across different professional roles, which is kind of hard when they also are associated with different professional identities that have professional associations, like designers have like their whole thing. There's a lot of like editorial professional associations that want to treat editors like doctors or lawyers, aka like as like an artisan job that doesn't unionize. And so I think that is where the trouble comes. It's like a question of occupational identity, whether people can see that by working so closely together, their interest spans across whatever the slight differences in what you're doing is. Yeah.
Okay, and yeah, our question was about how do we empower members not to rely on paid staff, and how we came to that political position. And I mean, it is on one level, I suppose, a political position, but more to the point, it's just a pragmatic position, really. There aren't enough paid union organisers in hospitality. There aren't enough in the same area, given the concentration of sites. There aren't enough resources devoted to doing like power analysis of tiny independent sites or small to medium chains. Like, it's not, I think, reliance on paid union organizers, like, that's all well and good as far as they have capacity and they are in your area. What we're trying to do with the network model is to emphasize that as much as organizers are really important and can be really valuable resources, and we work with them, we have worked with them, you know, we've been inspired by them, we learn from them. At the same time, there's a tendency for that to atomize union efforts. So in the same way that workplaces atomize worker struggle and keep us isolated from one another, often working only within one particular company or one particular employer, that can also be quite isolating in many ways. So the way that we try and get people to be more self-reliant is by providing and constructing a community. So it's not just about saying you have to do all of this by yourself. It's about saying, if you want to do this, we're going to have your back and we're going to do it together. So workers obviously have to lead the way in their own sites, but even if they have a paid organizer that they can go to for help or for assistance, for advice, for strategy. It's much more powerful to be able to draw on an existing local community that can back you up if it comes to it, especially in direct action. So it is a political position in one sense, because we want to get away from this sense of unions as insurance policies and more towards them as structures that workers can engage in, but also within those structures, workers will need to build their own power. Even in the best unions and even in the base unions, there are always going to be there's always going to be a mild conflict even between the kind of top-down strategy and between workers themselves in each specific site. If workers are organized with a community around them, they can harness the unions that they're using to maximum effect for their own gain. And it also, you know, to a degree, it also reduces the resource pressure on unions, because a lot of the work that would ordinarily be done by people that paid up organizers, members of the network, we see that as our social responsibility, but it's also what you do for a mate. We're all mates, we're all part of a community. It's not seen as some kind of external service that you can rely on. It's what you would want to be done for you, and it's what you do for others. And that sense of community that you construct, that also is politicizing in and of itself, in a way that relying purely on organizers that are paid up according to a postcode lottery, often that doesn't have the same long-term politicizing effects.
Amazing, thank you very much. We have another round of questions. We have two general questions and one more specific one, but which again I think can probably be reacted to by everyone on the panel really. So the first one was, thanks everyone. Curious if any of the speakers had much experience with more established left organizations in their workplace. How do they see the perception of left groups amongst their workmates? I'll let the speakers decide how far or narrow you want to understand the left in that question. Is there experience with established left organizations in their workplace, and how do they see the perception of the left amongst their workmates? Left group, sorry. The second question is, I would like to ask, as a young worker, how do I reach out and join a union if someone doesn't approach me? How should I go about it? Do I have to hide it from my manager and co-workers? So how do I reach out a union? How do I reach out and join a union if someone doesn't approach me? How should I go about it? Do I have to hide it from my manager and co-workers? And then the last question is to the bar worker comrades, but like I said, I think it can be relevant for everyone. Could you expand on what you see as the relationship between your sectoral rank and file network and the unions present in the industry? Can you expand on in and against? So perhaps developing more on the question on what you were already saying, Amma. So let's go in the same order again. John, the floors are yours.
Okay, I'm unmuted. No, I definitely haven't talked about specifically left groups within my workplace, because I barely get any chance to talk to people really at all. So the main chances when I do get to talk about people with stuff is on a more like base level. For example, just trying to giving each other tips on how to get through these days a bit easier, and as well as giving a bit of like anti-management sentiment. A lot of like the black workers do feel like the management target them more often, so I try to talk to them about that, and just try to like build a bit of like an anti-racist sentiment amongst the workforce as well. That's what I would target at the moment, but it depends on what workplace you have. You may want to be a bit different to me, because Amazon's a bit of a strange place to work. Specifically on the question on joining unions, the easiest way to join a union is to just go on their website and do it on there. It depends where you're actually working. Depends on what the best union is to join. So it's worth having a look to see if there's already a union with a decent presence in your workplace first, and then I would personally recommend that you join that union rather than joining a separate one. If there isn't, then your best bet is to just join one of the one of the what's called the general union to represent everyone. So Unite is strongest in the private sector, Unison strongest in the public sector. But just do a bit of research into your workplace. But it's not hard to join a union at all. Just go to their website, Google it, and I really do strongly recommend that you all join unions. You never know how they're going to benefit you. In my case, I'll keep this very brief. But one of the ways that joining a union benefited me personally is I once got into a bit of dispute with a former employer, and to keep things short, the union negotiated that if I sign a piece of paper agreeing that I will never accuse that company of having violated the Disability Discrimination Act 2002, they'll give me $7,000 to leave. So that's covered my union fees almost for the rest of my life. So as well as just like you should have solidarity with your colleagues, you never know how joining a union might just benefit you straight out financially as well. So do it. Done.
Thanks, John. Sam, the floor's yours.
Yeah. So again, I think the industry where I'm working within kind of defined how that there just wasn't there wasn't that much left group contact in the workplace. I feel like all of the actually a lot of the sub-editors and production workers are really favorable / interested in socialism, but at the same time, one of the things that sent me down writing this piece is I learned that our the sub who'd been there the longest, 20-something years, and then some of the like executive officers, whatever, of the company had been involved with scabbing for scabbing against the printers unions like 20 plus years ago. And so that kind of, and the company also likes to sue people and for using material, whatever. So I feel like the management, a lot of people experience at the company were really, really like specifically anti-union from their personal experience. But all of the sub-editor and production people were really in favor. I've had a ton of conversations about Bernie Sanders with people. I personally joined the National Union of Journalists, but it is kind of a trade union, and kind of as I said, like specifically the sub editors are kind of at the edge of what counts as a journalist. So a lot of the things that a lot of the help and resources that they provide sort of didn't quite apply to me. Which is unfortunate. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thanks. And then we'll go Isaac first, I think, and then.
So speaking on established left organizations in the workplace, obviously it's going to be different for every workplace. With mine, I would say not really. Most of my co-workers are, again, not very clued up on most of these issues. As in hospitality, it's not really seen as it's not really something you'd think you need a union for. But as we've come to see over time, our jobs are very precarious, pay's not great, etc. And then as joining a union, just as John said, online's your best bet. I just went straight online, done research of unions in the industry and just what unions kind of fit my personal beliefs. I joined one. It's very simple, very cheap. It's based on your wages, so it's nice and fair. They helped me out a lot in many different ways already. I've only been part of them for a couple of months, so again, I would highly recommend doing it. And I don't think you have to tell your boss or coworkers, but I would again encourage you to tell your coworkers. Definitely try to get them unionized as well. There's benefits to having the majority of your workforce unionized. So yeah, go out there and do it. And then I think, yeah, bang.
Say, sorry, can someone just repeat the question for the bartenders network? I've forgotten it.
Yes, so the question was, sorry, let me just bring it back up. So it was, could you expand on what you see as the relation between your sectoral rank and file network and the unions present, I can't speak anymore, and the unions present in the industry? Can you expand on in and against?
I think for a start, it's a positive relationship, largely to a great degree. A lot of the sites where we have members, they have already been working with organisers from different unions. So that includes UVW, Unite, the Bakers Union, IWW, and we've had meetings with organisers, like Zoom meetings, on specific campaigns and on specific sites. I think the way that we tend to engage with it, though, is because members of the network don't have to pay up, and they don't have to sign up to the union to be a part. They can still come and get advice, and it's a way of showing them that they can direct their struggle before they start having to pay a direct debit. Now, because of that, what can happen is there's a kind of alternative locus of power, a slightly different relationship. So the organisers that we work with are still like very heavily involved in the campaigns in specific instances, but increasingly what's happening is members of the network who aren't unionised will have already had conversations with us and among themselves, so that they are already kind of directing where they think things should go. As campaigns progress, then many of them end up signing up to the union. Some of them don't. But we don't have the imperative that union organisers do, of getting a certain amount of direct debits in a certain density. When we're focused on building power in the very practical sense, that doesn't necessarily have to be reflected in levels of union membership, although those levels of union membership are really important and provide very real protections. We try and build up power first to show workers that there is a point in actually then shelling out for it. And it varies from site to site, the relationship between rank and file and between paid organisers. There is, I think, at higher levels of different unions, there is a degree of caution that we're approached with, I think, because we are a bit of a loose cannon. Often, if you're working with a specific union, they will kind of have the final say and sign off on direct action. We're very much set up to kind of make that irrelevant to a degree. That sign-off procedure is no longer required if the majority of workers are already in agreement and those conversations have been facilitated, and we're not accountable to any of the unions we work with, which gives us real power, I think. At the same time, when we say that we're within and against unions, we're still very much, working with them and collaborating. It's a productive relationship, but it is just about slightly shifting the balance of power and slightly shifting the decision-making process. But I think that's why it's really important for us, at this stage at least, not to affiliate to a particular union, because we don't at any point want to be beholden to any of those structures, however productive and well put together they may be.
Amazing. Thank you so much to all four of you. We are slowly going to start moving to a conclusion. I'll give all of you another opportunity to say something, including Jamie. I also wanted to encourage the young worker who had a question about unions to get in touch with Notes from Below. A number of our members are union organizers. All of us have experience with it, so we'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you about how to go about it, different possibilities and strategies to unionize and organize your workplace. So please do get in touch. A final shout out as well to the fact that all the contributions you heard today are from a collection of pieces written by workers in our latest issue called From the Workplace. And you can either read it for free online, or you can order it and make a solidarity donation on the website. We are hosting this session today alongside Historical Materialism as part of Historical Materialism's 2020 online conference. For this conference, HM is offering discounts for both its journals and its book series. So I would encourage you to please go onto the HM website where you can sign up. The conference is only possible because we have a journal. Without the journal, there is no conference. So please do think about supporting the project if you are able to do so. And do have a look on the Haymarket website, where you will be able to see the special price, the discount on all the HM book series, 200 different issues that you can have a discount on for the duration of this online conference. Finally, this is only the first of 2 HM sessions today. So there is a book launch for the Southern Key at 6 p.m. UK time this evening. So please do join us for that as well. You will find the link on our social media, and you can hear it's a book launch. So you'll hear the author present the book, and it's obviously very important or in the kind of spirit of the time, given it deals with the question of labor and race in the southern United States. So please do join us for that as well. I will now let all the speakers have the last word. So we'll take you in the same order as you spoke, starting with Jamie. And this is a last opportunity also for me to thank all of you, all the speakers, but also all of you who have logged in to join us for this discussion. And again, to wish both our editor, Lorenza Monaco, and the teaching assistant who couldn't, both of them couldn't join us today because they're ill and have been struck down by the current pandemic. So we wish them well and hope they get back on their feet very soon. Jamie, the floor's all yours.
Thank you, Sai, and thank you to you as well for chairing, because online events like this can sometimes be challenging to do. A couple of things that I wanted to say. So the first thing is, I'm really pleased to see that we've had a discussion about how to start organizing, how these stories can be useful for making sense of how we work with unions, what kind of organizing we should take from the workplace, because that was the whole idea with this collection, was not just to get workers writing on the page and not just get it shared around, but to encourage people to think through new and exciting ways to organize, which I'm just really pleased to be able to be part of an event that has those kinds of conversations. I guess this is not quite what I've been asked to do, but in my final bit, I want to ask a small question to each of the other speakers, just to kind of wrap things up. Is one of the experiences that we had as editors doing this was, the opportunity to speak at length to people about their experience of work, to get these stories, to help people write their own story of their workplace. And the reason we did this, as I said, was not just to have that story about the workplace, but to give people a space to think about their work and to think through some of these questions. So I just wonder, maybe if each of the speakers, to wrap up, could say what you found useful or helpful about this, or would you encourage other people to do something similar? Like, how did you find the process of writing connected to other things that you do? So I'm going to hand over now to John. We're going to have the wrap up from the rest of the speakers.
Hello again. I'm not sure how to wrap it up. I was mostly pleased about the question that we got earlier about from the young worker asking how to join the union. Really, I think that is, if anything comes out of this stuff from people reading these pieces and listening to these talks, that it makes people want to think more about how they're going to get organized in their workplace, then that's really why I'm trying to do these kind of things. Really, it makes it a little bit worth it. So I think I'll just end with one of my favorite quotes, even if I don't like all the rest of his writings, which is from Antonio Gramsci, and that is what we need to have a, what it is, pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will, which basically means we need to fight hard to see the world as it is, and a lot of times it is grim, but we need to plow on anyway, because if the world is ever going to get better, or at least stop getting worse, it's going to be, we can't just depend on like governments just to fix it all out for us. We need to actually organize and do this shit ourselves. Cool.
For me, I feel like the process of writing this article was incredibly cathartic, because I was in a very, one of the things about reading through so much news and at such like a fine details, it starts to get, one, it like gets, it's in your head all day. And also it started to get me to doubt sort of the purpose and function of publishing and writing. Everything I was reading day after day after day after day was about getting people to invest in different hedge funds. And so to be able to participate in a publishing project alongside other authors and workers that specifically attempting to counter that was incredibly helpful. I should have mentioned that I wrote this essay in collaboration with one of the editors sub-editors I worked most closely with, and I've shared it with the subs, and everyone found it. Everyone was so excited to see the struggle and the conditions represented just at all. It's hard to find anything on the topic for this from publishing. And so it's been an amazing experience and super inspiring to be able to present alongside other authors and workers. So thank you all.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo what's been said in many ways, it was a really useful process of writing this. To clarify, the piece that we wrote from the network wasn't by any one person. We had hours of conversations and we transcribed them, and then collectively we framed it into something that seemed coherent. And it was definitely useful in being able to step away from the firefighting that we were doing. A lot of the kind of like casework that we've been doing has been, we've been in close proximity to it. It's been our experiences, those of other members. And it was really useful to have the opportunity to step back and actually consider the bigger picture. And I think that's definitely informed some of the ways in which we're trying to get a bit more secure in our organizing strategy. And also the process of writing it collectively as well. I think that really cemented the direction that we want the network to go in. It was a really nice collective process. And there was a final thing I was going to say, but I've forgotten what it is now. It was just like extremely useful, and that's it. With the writers' grant, we're putting that towards the basis of a strike fund for hospitality in South London, and also for resources that we're going to use to distribute and promote legal and trade union materials. And I just want to finish by saying as well, if anyone watching works in hospitality, whether or not you're from South London, North London, or like, God forbid, anywhere outside of London, do get in touch. We're always happy to jump on a Zoom call. And if you want to set up your own network, we're really happy to talk you through it too. Thank you very much, guys.
So yeah, just to kind of mirror what Sam said and Amar as well, I would say it was a very cathartic experience in the whole process. And it kind of allowed you to rationalize a lot of the thoughts you have about work when you've got other people who are agreeing with you from different places all over. And yeah, the whole process, it just meant you could, I would say rationalize a lot of the thoughts you may have thought were just kind of silly and like why you dislike work, but it allows you, especially now it's on paper and other people can pick that up and they're working bar jobs, feeling similar things, and they can be, oh, it's not just me, maybe this is a problem. And it allows people to start thinking and moving on from there. So I think the process is really helpful. I would say maybe even go ahead, write something about your work if you feel like it. You don't have to give it to anyone, share it anywhere, but just the process is good on its own. Tell your friends you love them. Yeah.
Thank you so much to all of you. And absolutely, if I can echo that last point, if you are thinking about a similar process, please do. It's true, you don't have to show it to anybody, but if you did want to show it to anybody, Notes from Below would love to carry your pieces and share them. It's amazing to see people in the chat as well as hearing other speakers talk about using the collection as an organizing tool, to read it with co-workers and to think about how do we move from analyzing the workplace to changing it. And that's, of course, what at Notes from Below we very much hope to facilitate. We have a new project in the pipeline where we want to use these workers' writings to do a broader analysis of the current labor movement across the UK. So if you're interested, please stay tuned. If you are doing these kind of projects, please get in touch. If you are thinking about organizing your workplace like the person in the chat, please get in touch also. Of course, at Historical Materialism, we are equally interested in publishing pieces, reflections, both theoretical and empirical, on the question of the changing conditions in the labor movement, challenges for workers and organizers. And please do think about submitting to the journal. One last time, this conference doesn't exist if there is no journal. So please do subscribe to the journal. You get a special discount as long as the conference continues on our website. If you go to Haymarket, you also get a special conference discount for the rest of the duration of the conference for the very extensive collection of Historical Materialism books in the book series. There's over 200 titles that you can order at a discount till the end of the conference. So please do that. And the conference, of course, continues for the next 10 days. You can find all the different events on our social media, and they will all be held online in this fashion. So do please sign up. And the next event is at 6 p.m. UK time this evening on the Southern Quay, which will deal with the question of race and labor organizing. It's a book launch in the American South, so very relevant and important to deal with the political questions that the defeat of Donald Trump will certainly not make disappear in the United States or around the world. So do sign up and log in for that as well. Thank you very much again to all of our speakers, to everybody for logging in. And as always, the struggle continues. Good evening.